On Monday, it was announced that Liberty Media, who own Formula One, have purchased Dorna Sports, who are the owners of MotoGP, meaning that MotoGP is now in the hands of the people who turned Formula One into a sport which is more focused on entertainment rather than actual racing itself. There is a lot of concern among the MotoGP fan base that MotoGP will suffer from the same fate, and it will just be turned into an overbloated clown show at some soulless track in some desert somewhere. But will Liberty Media and Formula One actually have an effect on MotoGP, and will this change be positive or negative for the sport? Let's take a look, shall we? The biggest concern among fans is that the fan favourite tracks like Aragon or maybe Phillip Island or Misano are going to be scrapped and replaced by soulless tracks in like the middle of nowhere, or maybe semi-permanent tracks in the city somewhere, like Las Vegas or Miami. I don't really see any street circuits like the Las Vegas Grand Prix happening. Purely due to safety, you just can't race motorbikes in a street circuit. However, I am concerned that a few tracks, like maybe Valencia or Misano, may get removed in favour of some Middle Eastern tracks. My prediction is that Bahrain will join the calendar very soon. We have already seen that Dorna Sports weren't afraid of going to new places. We've seen Thailand, Indonesia, Kazakhstan and India all introduced within the last few years in MotoGP. So to go to new places that offer a lot of money wouldn't be exactly new for the sport. And while I hope that some of the best tracks don't get axed, I do trust that any new tracks that are added will still provide good racing due to the competitive nature of MotoGP. You can't really have a bad MotoGP track. Another issue that may come up is that ticket prices are predicted to skyrocket, which would be a big shame for fans, but it's something that I completely see happening. We've seen ticket prices with Formula 1 go up quite a lot since the Liberty Media took over. The biggest potential benefit from this deal is that Liberty Media will be able to market MotoGP a lot better than it is at the moment and expose it to a much wider audience. Having a bigger audience and more eyes on the sport will only be a positive for MotoGP. And it may even help more manufacturers join the grid and want to compete. We saw that Liberty Media did a great job at reviving a bit of a stagnating sport in Formula 1. But with that comes a risk of the sport becoming a lot more focused on the show and the entertainment side of it, rather than actually focusing on the racing itself. We've seen this happen a lot with Formula 1, especially in the American races. And while we may see more celebrity grid walks on the MotoGP calendar, I'm still not concerned that it will affect the quality of the racing too much. MotoGP is a fantastically competitive sport, and if the racing stays how it is at the moment, all the dramatic show will be worth it. And there's real potential for MotoGP to become a much bigger sport and become a household name across the world. There seems to be sort of an identity issue around MotoGP in that there's not really any big superstars. Outside of Marc Marquez, most of the riders won't be known outside MotoGP fans. And better marketing would help the riders become more of a recognisable name for just the average person. There has also been a lot of talk about a potential Drive to Survive type series for MotoGP, which would be very interesting to see. The proposed name is Ride to Survive. I reckon it'd be something different. This would also help a lot in terms of expanding the audience and marketing it to a lot more people. And did you know there was actually already one for MotoGP made in 2022 and it was on Amazon Prime, but it completely and utterly flopped due to absolutely no marketing. So to see something like that be done properly and with the appropriate promotion for it, it could be fantastic for the sport. There's also a lot of speculation about Formula 1 and MotoGP merging together to do one event where both Formula 1 and MotoGP do the races at once on the same race weekend. I'll be honest, I really don't see this happening, because unless Moto2 and Moto3 are just ignored for a weekend or their races postponed to a later weekend, it's going to be so difficult to fit in Formula 1, MotoGP and Moto2 and Moto3 all into the same weekend, with all the practices and qualifyings and all the races. It would just be far too difficult, so I don't really see this happening, unless it's just a non-charity event, more of a publicity stunt. So in conclusion, there will undoubtedly be positive things that come from this acquisition. A larger audience and more interest in the sport will only be a positive for MotoGP, and it could inspire more talented youngsters to become motorbike racers in the future, and for maybe more manufacturers to want to compete in the sport. However, the obvious concerns are ones that MotoGP fans don't really want to see happening. People don't want to see fan favourite tracks leave the calendar just for some semi-permanent tracks in the city somewhere. And people don't want to see the sport become more of a show, with the riders paraded around at the start of every race. For me, I'm sort of on the fence with this one. I'll sort of accept the overtake and I'm very interested to see what will happen in the future, but I am scared about some of the things that could happen and that Liberty Media did with F1 I don't want to see him do it to MotoGP as well. For me, I think the short-term future of MotoGP is pretty safe, but I do sort of worry about what the sport will look like in about 10 years' time. Will we see a lot more races in America or in Saudi Arabia? I guess we'll have to wait and see. But as long as the racing stays as competitive as it is at the moment, I'll forever love this sport. So what do you guys think? Will this acquisition be positive or negative for the sport? Are there any points that I've maybe forgotten? Let me know in the comments, and while there, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. I hope you've enjoyed, and I will see you soon. Bye bye.